So good to have you back for your Monday mindset moment. This is our opportunity to have the chance to get to know each other through this Monday series and to get you some really powerful tools that can, one at a time, you can chip away at different goals you have for your children around their emotional mastery, around their emotional intelligence, around their resilience and self-management skills. We've got Janice here. Hello, say hello in the chat or on Zoom, and we've got some folks listening on Facebook. And today we're all talking about how to empathize without giving in. And the reason why I put these two things together is that there's often a sense of a bit of a conundrum between the two. That if I go down the road of empathizing with my child while they're having, let's say, a tantrum, there can be this tension around, well, if I empathize, am I actually reinforcing or even agreeing with their perspective, their behavior, their misperception of the situation? And oftentimes what I've seen over hundreds and hundreds of experiences is that there is an art to being emotionally present and available and empathizing with a child while still maintaining reality, while still maintaining the limits, while still maintaining the truth. And putting those two things together today is what our goal is. We've got some folks here on Facebook. It'd be great if you just let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, maybe the ages of your kids. Also same on Zoom with Janice. So I would put El Cerrito, California, and I have a 23 and 26-year-old stepchildren, as well as a bonus 7-year-old in my household. So we'd just love to hear from anyone who's here, just so we know who's here. And tell me, what is the hardest thing about kind of figuring out that blend or that edge around showing empathy, but also, holding the line? Like we have here, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Nice to have you here. She's in Berkeley with her 5 and 8-year-olds. So glad you're here. I know this is something that you were curious about from your share in the welcome post. So I'm glad you made it for this Monday mindset. Good to have you here. And then the reason I'm asking, like, what is the hardest thing about this piece around like empathizing versus being, feeling like you have to give in while you're empathizing, is because it gives me a sense of like how I can support you today as I roll out a couple of tips. Okay. So do put it in the chat, and then we can get to a mindset shift today, some insights. That's what the series is all about. So go ahead in the chat, let me know. And then the other thing that I want to just check in with you about is like, what emotion do you in particular have the hardest time being able to figure out how to empathize with it without giving in? And the reason why I'm having you pick an emotion is because oftentimes we do have certain ones that are just trickier to kind of be present with. Like I know for me, anger was one that was really hard. Like I had no problem with sadness. I felt like I had a lot of practice with empathizing with loss. But when kid was angry, especially at me, or in a way that didn't make sense to me or was unreasonable, like anger was really tough for me to empathize with, especially with young children. So if you were to pick from mad, sad, glad, and scared, and I would say the glad is sort of like that hyper excited, like kind of like frenetic, big activated energy. It might even be sort of like a little unhinged sort of feeling, like wild. So mad, sad, glad, or scared, put it in the chat. Which one in the comments, like which do you think you might have the hardest time sort of connecting to and empathizing with, and that'll help us with this next piece. So heading over to the visuals for today. So we're trying to empathize without giving in. And when we do that, sorry about that. Part of what makes that tough can be that, like I was saying, like oftentimes we want to empathize, but we don't necessarily want to reinforce maybe a really negative attitude, or reinforce that the way that you get what you want is you throw a fit and like, express all your anger all over the place. And then you get the cookie, right? And so there's this edge we're playing with. And what I can tell you is that there is a message in every time a child expresses that they're either mad, sad, glad, or scared, there's a message, a communication that's happening there that oftentimes like we will be just reacting to the emotion that's being thrown at us. We'll kind of want to throw it back, or we'll maybe shut down and protect ourselves from this big emotion, or we're like kind of at grasping of how to relate and how to be there for the child and support them. Or we kind of get like a really empathize and say, oh, same with me, same time, but we kind of lose track of what it is that we're trying to get done, or what needs to happen next. So there's a message behind each of them that if we can tune into it, it is incredibly beneficial, not only to you, but also to your child and the children. For example, mad, the message is usually something around, I know what I want, and either you or the situation won't give it to me, and that's why I'm mad. Yeah. Or when sad, it could be is a different message. It's like, I know what I want, I used to have it, and now I don't, and then I'm really sad about that, right? Glad is like, I know what I want and I have it. And so it's like, yes, right? Like I've got the thing that I want, or I got the experience that I want, I've got the person's attention that I want, and I'm excited, right? I've got the object that I want. Scared is often, I know what I want, but I don't know how to get it. And it can even be like abstract things, like I want to feel safer, or I want to feel less overwhelmed. I want to feel, I want to feel like I'm protected or something. I want to get away from this thing and I don't know how. That's when scared, like all ranges of scared, from like nervous to, very much terrified, can come in. So when you can think about like, what is this child trying to express when you're moving into empathy, it can be really, really helpful to kind of read the signs of those emotions, which we'll talk more about next week. But like really thinking like, what's something you could say that would empathize, but not necessarily agree with maybe their behavior, right? So it's like, oh, sweetheart, like let's say this child, I'm reading anger here, mad, and the parent looks like they're a little frustrated, like trying to explain something maybe, and it's like, sweetie, I know it's clear to me that you really wanted to have more time to watch your show tonight, and just pick one thing that makes sense about that, right? What is that message of mad, right? Remember, maybe you wrote it down. It was, I know what I want, but you won't give it to me, or the situation won't give it to me. And so you could say like, I know what you really want right now is to have more time to watch the show. And I really wish I could give that to you. Unfortunately, it is 8 o'clock at night, and this is our time that we turn off screens, as we've talked about before, hopefully. And yeah, I just want to know, how can I help you? How can I help you cope with this? And then you kind of move into emotion coaching and coping tools. But the first part is the empathy of like, I get it. Like can be so frustrating when you really want something and you don't get to have it right now. Just giving that amount of empathy sets the stage for connection. And through that connection, perhaps even being able to navigate this big emotion that's come up and help soothe them, and or like make some choices about how we're going to move forward and even problem solve. Or if it doesn't improve their mood, that you've empathized with them, at least you know that you've done your best to kind of meet them emotionally. So that's something I want you to consider, is like, what are they trying to express in that mad, sad, glad, or scared emotion? And especially like reading the emotion, so you're tuning into the right one. And what are some things you could say to empathize? My mindset shift that you want you to have from this mindset moment is that every emotion is communication. There's a message behind the emotion. And if you can pick one thing that makes sense about this emotion happening, you're going to be much more likely to be able to empathize without feeling like you have to agree that it's, oh, the world is ending, or yeah, spiders, you should never touch a spider, or or like, well, let's get it even crazier. And then like, they lose their minds. So hopefully that's been helpful. And then the other thing you can do is help kids recognize emotions. And when you do that, you're planting the seeds of empathy for them. And what you need to know is that neurologically, children are not able to necessarily take perspective fully until about age 7. For girls, it's slightly earlier. For boys, it's slightly later, like 6.5 for girls, 7.5 for boys. But why you want to know that is because if your children, like your 5-year-old Sarah, is younger than 7, you're really planting seeds of empathy. And one of the things they can do is start to read facial cues. And at all ages, this is useful. So please share this even with your tweens and teens and other adults in your life. Paul Ekman's lab came up with 7 universal emotions. After surveying like hundreds of researchers, their group also kind of said, actually, they kind of narrowed it down to 5, which is anger, disgust, enjoyment, fear, and sadness. But then there's also surprise and contempt. And this is all just from going to different cultures and showing the facial expression and asking if that's something that's recognizable as an emotion. And it turned out that contempt and surprise were also part of that. Anyways, so what you can do is you can play games where you like have an emotion or feeling chart, which we'll talk more about in some next weeks here. And you can practice like doing charades of playing out each one, like, which one is this? Right? And they're like, disgust, which one's this? Anger, right? And you can play through it and practice being able to actually read emotions as a game. And then you can also do it in the moment, being like, hey, look at your friend's face right now. Does she seem to be enjoying what's happening? Especially if you're trying to help them see that maybe their friend is frustrated with them before they start to fight and before they start to grab the toy and grapple with it, for example. So I offer these to you just so you have a couple of ideas of things you can do right away with the kids. And so this is our mindset moment, Monday mindset moment, and we'll be back next week for more. But go ahead and drop into the comments in the chat. This is very important, by the way, to do this step. One thing that you took away from this particular topic of tuning in, and empathizing without necessarily giving in, because we've got Jen here and Sarah here. And I want you to think about the emotion that you picked at the beginning of this talk. How could you make sense of one message that's in that emotion, like I modeled with the anger one today, that you could kind of get down with and reflect back with empathy, which is not the same as agreeing with the behavior that follows or that the emotion kind of inspires, right? So you're not saying like, yeah, I see that, you're upset that screen time's over, so of course you want to hit mommy. It's like, well, I don't know that we want to like reinforce that the hitting part at that moment, but perhaps you could say like, yeah, like you want something right now and you can't have it. And that's very frustrating. I totally get it. When you do that, it also gives you a way to kind of then like shift to, and I wish I could do this for you. And here's the reality though. And now we need to figure out how to cope with the reality. And sometimes you need to do it 4 or 5 cycles of that during a tantrum, and also like identify, very especially with anger, like that they might need some space, Sarah. So to actually put that lid back on. So Sarah got out of this that there's always a message behind the emotion. I love that. I really hope you maybe took some notes or can re-listen to this video of the 4 core emotions and the 4 core messages. It'll take you really far with empathizing. Jen is finally here. Yay, Jen, with your 11 and 8-year-old. I'm so glad you made it. Go ahead and put something into the chat around what emotion you might be wanting to empathize with more easily, and also what you got out of this Monday mindset moment. All right, y'all. So hopefully this has shifted you a bit, and I would like you to just play with this for the week and come back next Monday and we'll have another topic for you all. And let's see, next week we are going to be talking about naming it to tame it, and what can happen when you help the kids to name their emotions, and some fun ways to use feelings charts so that you can start to really bring in more of that emotional literacy and fluency in the family. All right. Well, lots of love to you all. Janice, let us know in the chat before you go if there's anything you got out of this. And that is our Monday mindset moment for this week. And I'll see you next Monday at noon. Lots of love to you all. Always feel free to invite folks into this free Facebook group. If you're on Facebook in the group with a little blue invite button in the main page, it's a great way to just share these resources with other big-hearted parents like you who want to be calm, empowered parents, raising happy, confident, and resilient kids. That's what we're about at Raising Our Resilience. So glad you made it in, and do share the love, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.